Hello and welcome back to another English with Reese video. I'm Reese from EnglishWithReese.com. I'm a master's level English teacher from the UK and I'm here to help you learn English by reading. Today I have a very interesting article from Plant-Based News. It's called German Supermarket Charges Climate Cost of Food, Raising Meat and Dairy Prices. So before we get started, if this video is too fast for you, you can slow it down. There is a button in the bottom right-hand corner of this video where you can choose the speed. And if you're not already, please do me a favor and subscribe. It helps me out a lot and it helps other people find these free English lessons. So let's jump into it. German supermarket charges climate cost of food, raising meat and dairy prices. So let's start with this word, charges. If you charge someone, it means you're asking them for money, maybe for a product or for a service. For example, if you go to the supermarket and you take a loaf of bread, the supermarket will charge you maybe £1 for that. So this German supermarket is asking you to pay for the climate cost of your food. In other words, the food we eat has an effect on the environment. You know, here it's meat and dairy we're talking about. It affects the environment. There are greenhouse gases and things like that. And that costs us money. So they have put that cost into the price of the product. We'll learn a bit more about this later on, so don't worry too much if you haven't quite got it just yet. Look at this. We've got raising meat and dairy prices. Raising something just means lifting something up. So if we're raising prices, we're just lifting the prices up. We're making things more expensive. Okay. I want to show you a bit of pronunciation here too. This word of, usually we're not pronouncing it as of. You know, it's not doing much in the sentence really, so we just want to say the word and move past it. So it comes out as of, almost like UV, of. Okay, so let's jump into the article. A German discount supermarket, Penny, recently trialed pricing products based on their climate and health costs. Okay, so let's start with that word discount. If something is discounted, it means the price is lower. I think we all have supermarkets like this in our countries where the food and the products are a cheaper price than most other supermarkets. And we kind of feel like it's cheaper in there too, maybe because of the walls or the floor help us to see that that's the case. So a German discount supermarket, Penny, recently trialed. Okay, when you trial something, it means you do something for a short time to see how it works. Okay, so Penny is trialing this new price structure. They're trialing lifting the prices up, raising the prices to see what happens. Does it get people talking? Will it change the way people shop? And things like that. And then we have pricing products. So let's look at that sentence again. A German discount supermarket, Penny, recently trialed pricing products. Now that might sound a bit strange. This word pricing, it looks like a verb, doesn't it? But we're using it as a noun. Now the reason for that is this is actually a gerund, or this could be a gerund phrase. That's when we use an ing verb as a noun, okay? It's also like, I like swimming, right? Swimming in that sentence is being used as a noun because that sentence is the same as I like chocolate, I like English, I like my phone, right? We're putting swimming in there. So it looks like an ing verb, but it's actually a noun. That's pretty interesting, right? It feels a bit confusing, but actually, it's giving us more ways to make sentences. There are more ways for us to be correct. So while it seems a bit scary, it's actually pretty cool. Okay, next up we got based on their climate and health costs. So here, based on means we are using some information to help support what we're doing. So we are using the climate and health costs, that information, to help us choose the new price in this example. During the week-long trial, Penny introduced new prices for 9 products to reflect the true costs of mostly meat and dairy items, determined by experts from 2 German universities. Okay, so check this out, week-long. Notice how we can just put these 2 words together to create an adjective. So we have a trial. How long is it? Week-long. It is a week long. We could easily have said during the trial, which lasted for 1 week. But that's a bit long. So we can do this, week-long. Penny introduced new prices for 9 products to reflect the true costs. Okay, let's go for this word, reflect. Another thing that reflects is a mirror. When we look in the mirror, we see ourselves. Now, these products also reflect. When we look at the products, we also see something else, right? So we look at the product, we also see these true costs. The true costs are in quotation marks, and that's because these are not costs as we think of it. Maybe they're not in terms of money. Maybe it's in terms of human and animal life. You know, if climate change gets bad enough, a lot of us will die. So that could be a true cost. Cost doesn't just have to be money. The mostly meat and dairy items, determined by experts from 2 German universities. So we're using the word determined here to say it was decided by people, but it wasn't just come up with. It was researched, you know. People really looked at the information, and in the end, when they thought of everything, they determined this. And it's determined by experts, people who are in the top of their field, you know. People with PhDs in climate change, for example, could be described as experts in climate change. The costs reflected the impact the products have on the climate, soil, water use, and health. So remember, I said that the cost doesn't have to be money, it can be other things. I mentioned health and life, but here they've actually written the list out for us. The costs that we don't usually pay for in our food, for the climate, you know, what we're doing to the planet, to the long-term weather. The soil, which is the dirt in the ground where we grow vegetables and things. Water use. So on farms, a lot of them can just take the water from rivers and things, but a lot of them need to take a lot of water, and that could be a problem. And health. So there's a lot of research these days that tell us that meat and dairy are not good for our health. And then I believe I've talked about this in another episode, but the word impact. Impact's such a fun word to find when it's written by a native because it means effect. Now remember, there are 2 kinds of effect. We have effect and effect, right? They sound the same, effect, or sometimes this can be effect. But in my pronunciation in British, we're usually saying effect. And because they sound the same, most natives don't know which is which because they hear it more than they read it. So, if they don't know what to write, they know that they can just write impact. It's a bit cheeky, but it works. Impact can be a noun or a verb, and it works for both words. So it's just a little trick you can use if you want. Wiener sausages rose from €3.19 to €6.01. And the cost of Maasdam cheese increased by 94%. Let's talk a little bit about prices here. Now, you might notice that we're putting the euro sign first, and that's what we do in Europe and in North America and a lot of places. The symbol will go first. And the way I say it is €3.19. But another way I could say it is €3.19. Or, if we know it's euros, we can just say 3.19. It costs 3.19. The experiment aimed to raise awareness about the hidden environmental expenses of groceries and their supply chains. Let's start with experiment. An experiment is like a test to see how something works or to find some kind of information. We use this in a scientific way. So this supermarket is doing a kind of test. It's doing an experiment to raise awareness. Okay, so they want to see, if we do this, what will happen? Will people talk about this more? And that's what raise awareness means. Make people more aware, make people think about things more. When we go shopping, we don't usually think about how our choices affect the planet, affect the animals, affect the water, and so on. So this German supermarket is trying to get us to think about that. So in particular, it wants us to think about the hidden environmental expenses. Okay, so if something is hidden, you can't see it. You know, when we look at the price of a cheeseburger, we're not seeing the hidden price in there, the price that we're not paying. So for example, I'm not sure about Germany, but in the UK, we pay for meat and dairy in our taxes to bring the price lower. So the price we see on that cheeseburger isn't the real price. Actually, everyone's paying for my cheeseburger. Okay, so that's a bit controversial, and I don't personally agree with that. But that's the way it is. So that's a hidden cost. But there are environmental expenses too. Of course, when you raise animals on a farm, there is a lot of waste. You know, animals poop, animals pee, and that water goes into the rivers, perhaps. It causes pollution. And another way, cows in particular cause a lot of pollution, a lot of greenhouse gases, methane in the air. These are costs that humans will have to pay for. But that cost is not in the price of the cheeseburger. And then we have the word groceries, which is food shopping. Now, this is actually a bit of a Northern American word. I'm going to get groceries. In British English, and I think in Australian English, we're more likely to say, I'm going to get the shopping, or I'm going shopping, or I have the shopping. Okay, so shopping can be a noun that means the things I have bought or the things I'm planning to buy. And then we have this one, supply chains. Those two words go together, supply chain. So one example could be a mango. A farmer in Thailand grows a mango. He sells that mango to a shipping service, and that shipping service sends it all over the world, and then these distribution centers in each country sell them to different supermarkets, something like that. That's a chain. It's like a long line between places. And on each of those lines, there are costs, especially environmental, from driving, from piloting planes or ships. All these things release pollution that we may or may not be paying for in the price of the mango. There is no denying that meat and cheese production is catastrophic for the environment, contributing to global greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, biodiversity loss, and water pollution. We have a lot of big words there. I'm going to start with denying, okay? I've talked about this a few times in my videos. To deny means to say you didn't do something. So here they're saying there is no denying that meat and cheese is catastrophic. Okay? You can't say it's not true. We have too much evidence that meat and cheese is really bad for the environment. Okay? You can't deny that. You can't say it's not true. And we have this word catastrophic. This is a really good word to use in your writing. It really describes what's going on. And what is that? A catastrophe is something that causes a lot of suffering or a lot of damage. So, environmental catastrophe would mean the damage to the planet, to the oceans, to the air, to the ozone layer. And the suffering would be the people and animals that feel bad because of that. But not just bad, maybe they can't find food anymore. Maybe the floods have destroyed their houses. So we have damage and suffering being caused by meat and cheese, pretty much. So in particular, it contributes to, or in other words, it is part of the reason for global greenhouse gas emissions. So global, we're talking about around the world. And then greenhouse gas are the two words that go together. These are the gases like methane that stop at the top of our atmosphere and make us hotter and hotter and hotter. And emissions just means what comes out. So for example, a car's emissions, that would be the smoke that comes out of the back of the car. And that's also a greenhouse gas emission. Deforestation, you might know this part, forest, lots of trees together in a big area. Like in Brazil, you've got the Amazon rainforest. And deforestation is where we take those forests away. We are cutting those forests down largely so that we can farm animals like cows, which is doubly bad because the cows themselves cause greenhouse gas emissions. Then we have biodiversity loss. Okay, let's jump into it. We've got bio. Bio is like biology, which is a subject you might have done at school. It's the study of animals and plants. So when you see this, bio, we are usually talking about animals and plants. So biodiversity, we've got lots of different kinds of animals and plants. And loss, these animals and plants are dying, they're disappearing. And of course, that's because of the climate change too. And then we have water pollution, which we've already talked about. While rare, such initiatives highlight a trend in Germany toward acknowledging and accounting for climate costs of foods. Now look at this, we have foods, not just food, foods. Why is that? When we put the S at the end of food, it's because we want to show we're talking about lots of different kinds of food. Another good example of this kind of grammar would be fish, right? There are lots of fish, but I can also say there are lots of fishes. And fishes means lots of different kinds of fish, lots of different species of fish. You can do this as well with fruit or fruits. I have a lot of fruit. It could be anything. It might all be the same fruit. I have a lot of fruits. I have lots of different kinds of fruit. That's pretty interesting. Bit of grammar, I think. So let's jump back to the start for some vocab. While rare, you might know this one from rarely. I rarely go swimming. It means something that doesn't happen much. So while rare, such initiatives, okay, an initiative is like an idea you have that you then do. We're usually using it in a positive way, so maybe there's a problem in the world, and so we've had this idea, and this is what we're going to do to try to help that problem. So here we have climate change, and this initiative of putting the whole price in the food, that might help us improve the problem. And then we have the word highlight. Now, interestingly, this is what I'm doing now, putting a yellow highlight on the word highlight. I'm doing this to highlight the word. Okay, let me put it another way. To highlight something means to show it very obviously. You want the person to notice this. So I wanted you to notice the word highlight. And the German supermarket wants to highlight that climate change is happening because of the food we are buying. Okay, let's jump forward 2 words to the word trend. Okay, now the best way to describe a trend is to say, this is the direction things are going. This is the way we can see it going for a long time. So the trend in Germany is acknowledging and accounting for climate costs of food. There is a trend. People are acknowledging this more and more and more. You might notice in your own country that people are eating meat less and less and less. That is a trend because of climate change, because of health, because of animal rights and things like that. So I talked about this word acknowledge last time, but it's been a while, so check this out. It's built on the word know. I know it, okay? When you acknowledge something, you say, okay, I have heard that. I know that's a thing now. And then we have accounting for. These often go together. So if you want to account for something, you want to put that into your decisions. I'm going to use this information and put that into my decisions. So my decisions account for maybe climate change, like it is in this example. Lidl, another budget supermarket, has also been reducing meat and offering more plant-based products, with the chief buyer stating that there is no second planet. Okay, so I'd like to start off with some grammar here. So check out this part here, another budget supermarket. Actually, if we took that out of the sentence, it would still make sense. Lidl has also been reducing meat. So why is it there? It's just to give us some extra information. Now, the important part is these commas. You have to have the comma before and after, so the reader knows that it's not part of the main part of the sentence. Okay, so I'll give you another example. Reese, an English teacher, is recording a video. Okay, we could easily say Reese is recording a video, but an English teacher gives us some extra information about that. So Lidl, another budget supermarket, has also been reducing meat. Okay, so when you reduce, you bring something down. So perhaps Lidl was selling, I don't know, 10 tons of meat a week. Now, they're not putting that much in the shop. They're going to put 5 tons in instead. They are reducing it. They are bringing down the number. And they are offering more plant-based products. Okay, so when you offer, you put more things out that people can get. So they've brought the meat down and they've put plant-based products up. But what is a plant-based product? A plant-based product is a food, usually, that is only made out of plants. So, of course, there is this trend now where people are eating less meat, but they still like the taste. So companies are making meat that is not from animals, it is made from plants. So these plant-based burgers are totally made of plants. There is no animal product in here at all. Okay, so that's a plant-based product. With the chief buyer, okay, the chief is the #1 person. So maybe Lidl has a lot of buyers, and this is the leader. This is the boss buyer. And he said, that there is no second planet. So what I like to do now is read through the entire article and just read it as a native. You know, I am a native, but we've been stopping so I can explain things. This time I will not be stopping. It's up to you to follow along as I read. But before I do that, I would like you, again, to click the subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you have, thank you very much. Now it's your time to like the video. Okay, let's jump into it. German supermarket charges climate cost of food, raising meat and dairy prices. A German discount supermarket, Penny, recently trialled pricing products based on their climate and health costs. During the week-long trial, Penny introduced new prices for 9 products to reflect the true costs of the mostly meat and dairy items, determined by experts from 2 German universities. The costs reflected the impact the products have on the climate, soil, water use and health. Wiener sausages rose from €3.19 to €6.01. The cost of Maasdam cheese increased by 94%. The experiment aimed to raise awareness about the hidden environmental expenses of groceries and their supply chains. There is no denying that meat and cheese production is catastrophic for the environment, contributing to global greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, biodiversity loss, and water pollution. While rare, such initiatives highlight a trend in Germany toward acknowledging and accounting for climate costs of foods. Lidl, another budget supermarket, has also been reducing meat and offering more plant-based products, with the chief buyer stating that there is no second planet. Okay, that's going to be it from me today, guys. I hope you learned a lot, and I'll see you in the next one.